What's going on, everyone? My name is Phoenix, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about playing Nurse on console with a controller. Where the game is definitely not optimized. Anyways, anyone that knows me or watches me play knows that I love to play the nurse. You could say I'm a nurse main, quote unquote, even if I'm a tad bit boosted. But with that being said, let's jump right on in. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about countering things that console nurses tend to struggle with. That being cars, tires, short loops, crates, other various things you'll find on the maps that can cause you some issues. So when it comes to playing the nurse, and specifically countering short loops, obstacles, there's a few things you should keep note of. Firstly, that every survivor has their own juke pattern. No two people dodge exactly the same way. So what I do, I always take the first blink or two to test that survivor. What are they gonna do? Will they double back? Will they run in a straight line? Do they run kind of spastically? Do they bait windows? Do I need to be watching for them to spin quickly? Uh, you know, they all have their own counters. They all have their own ways to deal with things that survivors do. But this is about obstacles. So the other thing to keep in mind is movement speed of the nurse versus the survivor's movement speed. So the nurse's default movement speed is 96.25%, while a survivor's default movement speed is 100%. So this means that the nurse's movement speed is slower than survivors, which means that you must use your power to catch them. You have to blink if you want to catch anyone. You will not get them chasing them on foot unless they are very, very dumb. And this, is also going to be the only way to catch someone if they're looping you around, say, a car. So the car is something that tends to give nurse players a bit of trouble. It's a longer loop. If you attempt to bloodlust a survivor around it like any other killer can, you will never catch them. It's gonna waste your time, it's gonna let the other survivors do generators, it's gonna let them break your totems, it's gonna waste all of your time. Just don't do it. Bloodlust is a big no-no. Survivors that are experienced against playing nurses may try to abuse this because a lot of killers don't really understand how to counter it. I see nurses all the time that'll try to chase me on foot around a car because they can't blink through it or they feel like they can't blink through it. But there is a way to do it. It's just a little bit difficult. Using a controller as opposed to a mouse and keyboard, one thing that console nurses have the disadvantage of is turning speed. You cannot turn as quickly as you can on PC. That is one of the things that really hinders the nurse on, PS4 where I play. But there is a way to do it, so I would suggest you crank your sensitivity all the way up to 100% if you are trying to play nurse. This is going to maximize your success on blink hits. Dealing with the car specifically, there are a couple of things you can do. The method that I use most commonly is the zigzag blinking, as in blinking from one corner of the car to the other, trying to force the survivor onto the long side of the car to get a more clear hit. You can curve around the corners, but it is going to be a lot easier on you if you can kind of force them to one of the long linear sides of the vehicle. That's going to be where you can get the easiest smack. They don't really have anywhere to go or anywhere to dodge. So playing diagonals like this can also confuse a survivor, and they'll end up running right into you if you time it correctly. If they try to double back on you while you do this, if you land your blink on a corner and they try and spin around and double back on you, that's a free hit. Now on a diagram it looks simple, but I know that in play it can be a little bit different since, as I said, every survivor plays differently and can be very, very unpredictable. So keep in mind what the survivor is doing. Try and out-mind game them. Try and be unpredictable. Don't let them get the better of you because, if they do the same thing over and over, learn their pattern and use it to your advantage against them. Another thing that you can do if you're having a little bit of trouble with the car loop is faking out which direction you're going to blink, as in charge your blink while you're looking to the left, and then last minute look to the right and blink to the right. Hopefully, they will have anticipated you blinking to the left, they start running to the right, you're already going to the right, and they'll land right into your hands. This method also works around small obstacles, crates, hay bales, other objects that you'll find around maps, the short loops, the safe pallets that you'll find on maps. They'll try and run to the left, fake out left, blink to the right. Now, smarter survivors will also switch up their patterns to try and confuse you. More seasoned survivors will understand that you're reading their patterns, and they'll try and be unpredictable. They might double back once and then never do it again. Hence, you'll waste time baiting it. So, just keep an eye, be cautious, watch what the survivors are doing, and try and understand how they're moving, what's going through their head. The whole game with Nurse is to be 3 steps ahead of the survivors, get into their heads and know what they're going to do before they know what they're going to do. So another thing that tends to cause Nurse trouble, her kryptonite is tires. They're small, they're tricky to work around and the survivors abuse them, which you'll find a lot of the times survivors will run straight to a pile of tires because they know that it's a challenge for a nurse to deal with. A common misconception among console nurses is that you cannot blink through the tires, but that is definitely not the case. You just have to time and charge your blinks for a little longer than other objects, but you can still blink through them, be able to turn around, get the hit. It's very, very possible to go through them. They do have a little bit of a weird collision, but if you charge the blink long enough, you just have to hold it for a little longer than you think you do. You'll go right through them. It's a little bit difficult, but once you get the hang of it, it's easy peasy. So make sure that you utilize the maximum time in your chain blink window to try and get through them. Because of the fact that they have a collision, you'll still end up on the other side. You'll still be able to do the diagonal method that I mentioned before to get up to them. Tires are a tight loop for survivors, so this means that a lot of nurses will try to bloodlust around them, especially the wider piles of tires on Autohaven wreckers. But this is, again, a big no-no. Do not attempt to bloodlust a survivor around tires. It's going to waste an ungodly amount of time. It's not worth it. Try and either blink through them, or if all else fails, you can always just leave that survivor and go chase someone else who's not going to give you as much trouble. It is 100% okay to disengage from a chase. It is a tactical decision to make. But the best way to deal with tires is to, again, blink in the zigzag method that I demonstrated with the vehicle, with the car. That is the only way that you're going to really get them. You might blink once and they might try and double back to get around the tires. Again, it's another free hit. There's the smaller stacks of tires, which some survivors will try and play, but those are so short of a loop that you could honestly just mind game them with the red stain. A very simple mind game will be more than enough to deal with them there. It's not as much of a challenge as the big stacks. It's not a large enough loop for the survivors to play successfully. Now, when it comes to things like hay bales and other loops that you can't see over, it gets a little bit more tricky because you have to rely more on prediction and guesswork than actual mind games or diagonal blinking and pathing. But the same principle still applies. Don't blink in a straight line, blink diagonally through the objects in an attempt to confuse or just, get sights on whoever you're chasing. If possible, practice landing right in the middle of the pallet if there is one between the hay bales on the farm to prevent them from using it. 100% body blocking is a viable method to use with a nurse. If you land correctly, they won't be able to use that pallet. You'll block them and it'll give you a free hit. If you're not feeling comfortable blinking, if you're afraid you might lose someone by fatiguing, it's not optimal. But go ahead and walk. Peek around corners. If you can see them darting, around the corner, you can see their feet last minute, scratch marks, blood. If you feel more comfortable walking, I don't suggest you do it, but it is 100% a viable tactic. I do it myself, so you don't need to feel guilty about being on foot if it's going to help you. Now there are some perks like Shadowborn that will help you track people through fatigue and glimpse survivors through walls as you blink through them. You can even catch glimpses of survivors in lockers if you blink through it with Shadowborn. It has happened. I don't know if it's a bug, but it's definitely something that I have seen in game. Console nurses can't rely on the flick of a mouse to get our hits, but it is still possible to spin quickly. Sometimes it's just not possible to get the speed that we want. Don't get discouraged if you miss. It happens to everyone who's tried to play nurse with a controller. She is still an extremely strong killer, just not as much of a complete beast as she is on PC, so practice, practice, practice a lot. It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to perfect her, and even then, there's room for improvement. I have bad games all the time, and it's super easy to get frustrated, but just don't give up. Keep at it. Practice diagonal blinking, turning as you blink, trying to out-mind game and predict the survivors. Try and stay 3 steps ahead of them at all times. In my personal opinion, she has the steepest learning curve in the game when it comes to playing with a controller, and there's a lot of things that do hold her back, but with enough practice, you can also still dominate the game with her. If you're interested in seeing more nurse tips from yours truly, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps out some other aspiring nurse players, and I hope to see you all next time. Love you guys.